If you're watching this video, you've probably gotten to the point in your journey where dieting and restricting food has only ended in failure after failure. Fortunately, there's another approach to food that's way more holistic and realistic. Today, we're talking about intuitive eating. If you're new here, I'm Talia, founder of Workweek Lunch, and I'm a meal prep expert and intuitive eating advocate. Today, I'm just going to share the 10 principles of intuitive eating and how they apply to real life. If you've never heard of intuitive eating or these principles, at first they may sound a little bit insane. I definitely felt the same way when I first learned about this a few years ago, so I feel you, but stay with me and I'd love to hear what you think about intuitive eating in the comments after the video. When I first learned about intuitive eating, my mind was blown. There was even an option to pursue health that had nothing to do with weight loss, restriction, or clean eating. But it does exist. Okay, so what is intuitive eating? It probably sounds like just eat whatever you want, whenever you want, right? But that's not the case. Intuitive eating is an approach to eating developed by two dietitians in the 90s, and I've linked to their book below. It's called Intuitive Eating. And basically it was developed as a way to heal your relationship with food after years of dieting and failure with dieting. It is not just eat whatever you want whenever you want. There are these 10 principles, which we're going to get into, but it rejects the idea of weight loss. Intuitive eating involves relying on your body's internal cues to make food decisions instead of external cues like food rules that we get from diets and clean eating and all that stuff. Basically, intentional weight loss does more harm than good at the end of the day. 95% of diets fail, right? And people go back to their original weight or more. And it ends up leaving people with a very disordered relationship with food or actual eating disorders. That's why intuitive eating was developed, to kind of offer an alternative and a path to healing from all that dieting. Okay, so let's get into these principles. There are 10 of them, and we're gonna go through each one. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about them. And again, if you have any questions, just pop them in the comments. The first one is reject the diet mentality. The diet mentality is the lens of how you see every decision in your life when you're trying to lose weight. Every decision you make is either helping you towards your weight loss goal or pushing you back away from it. It's so black and white and there's no gray area, and that's really, really tough. That's really hard. It makes life a little bit more complicated than it should be, right? So the first step with intuitive eating, and there's a reason why this is the first principle, is to reject the idea that you need to lose weight to be healthy and happy. You can't want to lose weight and be on a weight loss journey and eat intuitively at the same time. The two really conflict against each other. So if you see anyone online promoting intuitive eating as a weight loss method, they don't know what they're talking about. Seriously, it's kind of dangerous. Just watch out for that, okay? As you go along, if you learn more about it. I would say right off the bat, this first principle, you could probably tell intuitive eating is more about what's going on in your mind around food and less about what you're actually eating, which it makes it harder to do, because diet is just like, here's what to eat, here's what to avoid, that's it. There's the promise of weight loss. It never really works out. With intuitive eating, it takes a long time to undo and unlearn everything you've learned from dieting. Principle number 2 of intuitive eating is honor your hunger. So this is a big thing we see in the land of dieting, is to curb hunger by drinking water, chewing gum, distracting yourself. It's insane when you think about it. Would you ever try to ignore, the urge to pee? No, you go pee and move on with your life if you feel like you have to pee. Same thing with hunger. We should just be honoring the hunger. You feel hungry, you eat, you move on. Of course, it's way more complicated than that. And diets basically tell us to eat less, right? That's how you lose weight. You gotta eat less. So that means you have to ignore your hunger. And hunger is a very natural cue that we all have. We need it to survive. It's just our body's telling us, hey, we need fuel. And I know it's hard because after years of dieting, it can be hard to tell what feeling hungry really feels like after you've been ignoring that cue for years. So it's definitely easier said than done. But with intuitive eating, you want to get in the practice of, if you feel hungry, you eat. Even if you ate like an hour ago, even if you ate 30 minutes ago, if you feel hungry, your body's really trying to tell you something, and it's okay to honor your hunger. And also, the more you ignore your hunger, the more you're probably going to eat later. If you are someone, I used to be like this, if you're someone who eats during the day and then comes home after work and you feel like you need to eat everything in your house, it's probably because you're not eating enough and you've maybe been ignoring your hunger, and you come home and eat everything. So principle number 3, make peace with food. Give yourself permission to eat all foods. Yes, even the ones you've been restricting for years because some diet rule told you to. For me, that was pasta, bread. I used to not eat after 6 p.m. because I did Goop once. I did the Goop cleanse. Making peace with food involves giving yourself permission to eat all the foods that you were told to avoid. And I know it sounds really scary. It is. It's like, wow, once you start eating all those cookies, you're never gonna stop and then you're gonna eat the whole thing of cookies. It's a real fear, and it's something that you're gonna have to lean into if you wanna make peace with food. The idea is eventually you will get over cookies. Once they're available all the time, like carrots or other health foods, you won't care that they're there because it's just a food. And that is part of making peace with food. You just treat all foods the same, and the ones that you previously used to restrict become less sexy in your mind because you're allowed to have them whenever you want. And then food decisions become more of a, do I want this? And not so much of a, oh, I shouldn't have this, and then I have to, and I'm gonna eat it and I'm bad, and it's like a whole mess. Principle number 4, challenge the food police. So kind of what I was saying earlier about food rules, this is when you want to really challenge your thinking around food. If you pick up like a donut and all these voices start firing off in your brain about, oh, I shouldn't eat that, so bad, how many calories, blah, 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 that's the food police, and I encourage you to challenge those voices. Why is it so bad? Why are calories bad? Why, if I want this, why can't I eat this right now? Like, where are these rules coming from, and are they really valid? Do they really serve you? Do they make your life easier or harder? So that's kind of, and again, the food police can also be external, other people in your life, not just the voices you hear in your head about food, the actual people around you. Like, oh, are you sure you want to eat that? Oh, you're having another one, all that stuff. Challenge that if you feel comfortable. Why not? That's kind of like, yeah, I like bagels, I'm gonna have another one. That's kind of what challenging the food police looks like when you get comfortable with it. The next principle, number 5, is discover the satisfaction factor. Satisfaction is more than just physical. It also means to feel satisfied around when you're eating food on an emotional and mental level too. If you're eating in a way that isn't satisfying, you are basically gonna feel deprived. It's like when you really want ice cream, but you decide to go for Halo Top instead of the real thing. I'm sorry, but Halo Top is just not as good as regular dairy ice cream. I'm talking about making the swap with the intention of trying to be healthier or lose weight. I'm not talking about allergies here, so just keep that in mind. But basically, when you're making food choices around what's smartest for weight loss, you're not really allowing yourself to feel satisfied by giving yourself the thing you really want. So again, feeling satisfied is more than just a physical sensation. It really happens in the mind and emotionally when you're eating a meal that you really want and you're really in the moment enjoying it. And so that's part of intuitive eating too. Principle number 6, feel your fullness. So fullness is a little bit different than satisfaction. Fullness is the physical feeling of the fact that you ate enough, right? And you're no longer hungry. So that's what feeling full is. Of course, after years of dieting, you might not know what feeling full feels like. It definitely happened to me. It's really easy to turn intuitive eating into a hunger and fullness diet, right? You only eat when you're hungry and you only stop when you're full. The thing is, of course you can eat past fullness sometimes, and of course you can eat when you're not hungry. Intuitive eating isn't about controlling how you eat, it is about tuning into yourself. So part of that, of course, is honoring your fullness. So example, today I had lunch. I really wanted a piece of banana bread after lunch, but I was too full and I knew I could have that piece later, and I did. So that's kind of how I honored my fullness today. I just was like, okay, I'm too full to eat this thing right now, but I know I can eat it later, and I did, and life goes on. One thing that really helped me learn what fullness feels like was practicing mindful eating. I recommend doing this 1 meal a day for about a week. Don't do this for every meal because it'll just be really sad and lonely. Just 1 meal a day for a week. Eat something with no distractions, no phone, no podcast, no TV, no conversation, just you and your food. And this will allow you to really tune into what's happening when you're eating a meal. When do you start feeling full? Do you like the flavors and the textures? What would you do different next time if you cook the meal? It's kind of crazy how much of that we miss when we're eating in front of the TV or when we're having conversation over a meal, which is great. Again, that's not a bad thing, but learning how to reconnect to this cue. Part of that process could be eating a few meals with no distraction just to see what it's like. And that really helped me, so I recommend trying it. Principle number 6 is cope with your emotions with kindness. But this is where emotional eating comes into play. A lot of us would call ourselves emotional eaters because when we're feeling sad, stressed, nervous, angry, or happy, good emotions, we want to eat. It's so normal and human to use food as a coping method. Like, there's nothing wrong with turning to food in these moments. With intuitive eating, we embrace adding other coping methods on top of food. So it's not just about making sure that basically you're using other ways to cope with your emotions outside of food. So that could be therapy, talking to a friend, going for a walk, meditation, yoga. There's so many different ways to cope with emotions. Journaling, the list can go on and on. Whatever works for you. I am someone who goes to therapy. I also rely heavily on my friends, and I think that I used to be an emotional eater, but now when I'm feeling upset or stressed or anything, I don't have that much of an appetite. Food doesn't solve problems. We all know that, right? Food is not going to solve any stressful or upsetting situations, because often what happens with emotional eating is that you start to feel upset that you're emotionally eating, right? So it kind of piles on to the negative emotions you're already feeling, and we don't need that. So that's where this principle comes from. We don't want to add to the stress and guilt and shame by just relying on food when we're feeling emotional. Principle number 8 of intuitive eating is respect your body. And I think this is the hardest principle to deal with, to embrace, because it's all about accepting your body the way it is, which is so hard to do when we're told our entire lives that we need to be smaller or lose weight to be healthy, which is just not true. Not true most of the time. And in fact, weight loss is not, the end all be all of being healthy. So respecting your body is understanding that body diversity is a thing. We are not all meant to be the same size. Unfortunately, this is the hardest one because the world is built for small sized people. Built for straight sized people, meaning straight size like the sizes in any regular clothing store where you can just walk in and buy clothes. That's what I mean by straight size. Our world is hard to live in if you're in a larger body. That is true. And if you are in a larger body and you're watching this, I want to call out that intuitive eating is probably going to be more difficult because of our society and culture. It is absolutely possible, but this respect your body piece is really, really hard. I still struggle with this myself, and I've been on this intuitive eating train for 3-ish years. So, and I'm someone who doesn't have to deal with any weight stigma or fat phobia, and so I can only imagine what it's like for people who do. Again, I only have my experience, so I'll leave some resources in the description about that. All right, principle number 9 is joyful movement. This is one of my favorite ones because obviously with intuitive eating, we're not throwing health out the window. We can all agree, no matter what background you have, that exercise and movement is health promoting. It's good to exercise and good to move our bodies. When you're on a diet or trying to lose weight or whatever, you are generally using weight loss to support that. You are generally using exercise to support that goal. The purpose of your exercise is to lose weight or be smaller or be toned or be more fit or whatever BS, right? With intuitive eating, exercise is about engaging in joyful movement. What kind of movement makes you feel good? What kind of movement do you like? Not all of us like HIIT workouts or strength or weight training and all that stuff. I like snowboarding. That's my favorite type of movement, and I could do it every single day. Seriously, I love it so much. I also love walking, and I used to really love soccer and gymnastics. I've been active my whole life, and my parents put me in sports. I did a lot of sports growing up, but I really, really enjoy, at this point, snowboarding, walking, and some light body weight strength workouts. I'll do yoga sometimes, but none of it's like I have to do this to be healthy or I have to do this to lose weight. It's just engaging in movement when I feel like it, when it feels good, and knowing that it's not, the purpose of it is not to change how I look in any way. It is just to engage in something that's going to make me feel better, and that's also fun. So I'd ask you, what is your joyful movement? What kind of movement would you want to do if you were just doing it for fun? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear it. There are so many fun answers to this. I'd love to know. All right, the last principle of intuitive eating, principle number 10, is gentle nutrition. Like the movement piece, again, we're not throwing out health out the window here. We definitely want to embrace nutrition from a neutral point of view. Gentle nutrition isn't about these foods are good and these foods are bad. It's more about knowing what foods kind of have what purpose, because they all play a part. So gentle nutrition is the last principle because it's probably what you want to focus on after you've gone through every other step with intuitive eating, after you've rejected the diet mentality, after you've learned to honor your hunger and fullness and learn to respect your body and all that. Then you can start thinking about gentle nutrition, which foods are going to be health promoting and which foods are just fun and you enjoy eating and they're not necessarily health promoting, but that doesn't mean they're bad or that you shouldn't have them. If you look at my Instagram feed, you'll see meals that are full of vegetables and a wide variety of ingredients, from whole proteins and whole grains and all that stuff, like all the quote unquote good stuff, to processed stuff, stuff that comes out of a box like pasta, white rice, and shredded cheese, all the stuff that diet culture loves to demonize. So you can have both, I eat dessert every single day and that doesn't mean I'm unhealthy. Okay, so those are the 10 principles of intuitive eating. I hope that you enjoyed this video, that you learned something, and if you have any questions about intuitive eating, pop them in the comments. If you have any thoughts about your own journey, I'd love to hear. Share below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out, and I'll see you next time.